Orioles are doing it the right way. Look, if you're going to tank and go full rebuild, just do it. Just do it. You gotta, you can't be half pregnant.
Yeah.
Shutting it off the pot, man. Just do it.
Uh-oh. That's gone. George Brett has just homered, and Billy Martin and the Yankees want the bat. Look at Martin.
Well, what they're talking about, Frank, is that he's got too much pine tar, and you've got to have a certain amount of distance from the trademark of the bat and the pine tar.
And Nettles is leaving the field as if the game is over. Oh, he's just coming in.
I'm not sure. They might have a legitimate gripe. They might be going to call George Brett out.
Well, the Yankees win. He's out.
Yes, sir.
Brett is out. Look at this. Brett is out. And
Team is back.
he is out and having to be forcibly restrained from hitting plate umpire Tim McClellan.
And welcome back to another episode of Too Much Pod Tar as we continue our 30 teams and 30 pods. And on this second episode of this series, it will be the Baltimore Orioles, who had the second worst record in the majors, of course, at 54-108, last in the AL East. And for the show, we have avid Orioles fan Tommy Yoon on, who does a few things for Roto Grinders, fantasy baseball for DFS. And also joining me today is Johnnie Black from the Scorecrow. So thanks for coming on, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Alex.
Yeah, no problem. So, obviously we got to talk about, the pressing Orioles team, but, it was they were expected to be bad. It's a rebuilding year. So they're going to be taking a few years till they, get back to where they were.
It's going to be a while, but at least they have a plan to get back into the playoffs, which is their hope.
Yeah, that's the goal for everybody. And then obviously they have, Adley Rutschman, who they picked number one overall last year in the draft. And I think he's definitely going to be a huge piece of the future.
Definitely a huge piece. I mean, for them drafting, Rutschman last year, has really elevated their farm system. I mean, under Dan Duquette, the farm system was pretty much one of the worst in all of baseball. And recently they've jumped all the way into about, being 11th, ranked 11th in the farm system. So, they're up and coming now. The prospects kind of look good. It's been a while since the O's had, prospects like Rutschman and some of the other up and coming guys like Mountcastle and Diaz as well.
Yeah, for sure. Before I go any farther, I just want to say that you can follow Tommy on Twitter at BigAsian35, and then I'm also on Twitter at Alex Kielar, and Johnny's on Twitter at JBall0202. Yeah.
JBall0202.
And then follow the Scorecrow at the Scorecrow. So, yeah. Then first, kind of just to start off, the first topic I want to go over is just what are some of the positives that you took away from the Orioles 2019 season? Like, if you could take any positives from it. I'll start with Tommy.
Yeah, there were a few positive with the O's this year. I mean, if you look at on the hitting side, they had a few 30, homer guys in Mancini and Nunez. It seems like, Trey Mancini, he's going to be the, face of the franchise here the next couple of years. He's developed into a very nice hitter. Nunez was a surprise, 30-run, home run hitter with 90 RBIs ending the season, as well as, Santander was another nice surprise. When they brought him up, he came up with 18 home runs and ended up with, 51 RBIs. And another guy that they, picked up in the offseason was Jonathan VR. And what a nice season he came up with 24 home runs and, 40 stolen bases. He actually had a 4 WAR as well too. So, and then their all-star pitcher, John Means, that was another nice surprise. That was probably the only bright spot about their pitching, as they probably had the worst pitching staff in all of baseball. But it was nice to have a nice surprise with John Means. He was an all-star. He had a 111 whip. Came out with 10 wins. So, they had a little decent core that they could work around with and hopefully build for the future.
As you said that, I was actually gonna just look up like some of like big Rule 5 drafts like picks to see what the biggest ones were.
Johan Santana has to be the biggest one.
Uh,
He was borderline a Hall of Famer. He should have been a Hall of Fame. But that's another story.
Dan Ugla was one.
Dan Ugla. Wow.
I remember him. Damn.
Wow. Dan Ugla.
Shane Victorino.
Oh, yeah, Shane Victorino. He's
Dan Ugla was a beast for like 2 years in Miami. And then all of a sudden he was like crap.
Yeah, Santana's number 1. He's then Dan Ugla second. Fernando Vina is 3.
Fernando Vina, really? He was
he was that shortstop.
Okay. Yeah. I remember him getting elbowed by Albert Bell.
Yeah.
At second base.
That was one of the worst contracts by the O's, signing Albert Bell at a 5-year, $76 million deal at that time.
No, but he was a beast back then, though.
He was, but the O's signed him when he had his degenerative hip, and he retired after 2 years into his contract. And the O's were stuck with his
stuck with
3 years of dead money.
Yeah, Albert Bell was he could hit. He could hit. Oh man, I remember those '90s teams.
Oh shit, Graham Lloyd was one too.
Graham Lloyd, the old Australian.
Yeah.
Big old lefty. Yeah.
He was.
Joaquim Soria. Shit.
Wow.
Oh yeah, Josh Hamilton. It's a shame about him with the freaking drugs. If that didn't happen to him, he probably would have been a beast. Like he was.
Hamilton, man. Yeah. First pick overall.
Yeah.
He was. What an amazing talent he was. If he never got into any of that, I wonder how great of a career he would have had.
Just think, he was so good, and he was drafted first overall. And then he came back after fighting all that, came back and dominated. Think of how good he could have been if he would have just, like in the beginning, would have just been the first pick overall and just dominated from them. He was the next Ken Griffey.
Yeah.
Honestly, dude. He was like, the dude was that awesome. And
he was the guy that could do it all.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you look what he did when he came back. And he came back when he was, 29, 30 years old? Came back from like a drug addiction and everything. Could you imagine if he never had those problems all those years? Could have just been that guy. Yeah. Incredible.
So I guess next thing it would be just like kind of go over like what the Orioles ceiling is for the 2020 season, and then their floor, like what your prediction is for the record.
Go right ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be another 100-loss season for them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for them, they lost VR and, they lost Bundy. So, with their rotation now, the rotation's in question. The only, 3 guys that they consider in the rotation right now is Alex Cobb, John Means, and Asher Wojciechowski. So those are the 3, and they got to fill out the rest of it. And, the bullpen was atrocious last year. They couldn't hold anything down, and we'll see if they can improve from last year. But I pretty much expect them to be another 100-loss team. to end up with a top 5 pick again in the draft. I don't, and losing VR, I don't know if you're going to be able to replace that, production with someone else. And so, their hitting could probably take a little hit, little bit of a hit. But, the best I think they'll do is, if everything goes right, they could be possibly, a 70-win team. But, that would be a dream season for them if everything were to fall into place. But, I don't think anything's going to get better for them this coming up year. Their goal is pretty much for the future, for the, to develop prospects. Yeah. I don't think you can expect much from the O's, for this upcoming season. They're going through the process. They have a plan developed for the future. The next 3 years, drafting the top 5, that should be the core that they're going to be building around, starting with Rutschman, the number 2 pick that they pick up this year, and then next year's draft as well. They'll be on their way, and hopefully in a few years, they'll start, knocking on the door for the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's going to take another year or two, easily. Rutschman this year, next year, with draft, get the 2nd pick, get someone else that you can build around, Hopefully they find something, with these draft picks. And the guys they're building their farm with, as far as like the 4 guys they got for Bundy and stuff like that, they can build a little organizational strength. So, yeah, that's about it. But I don't think the Orioles are going anywhere in the next couple of years. It's going to be a while.
They're trying to do it the right way.
Yeah. This is it. This is the rebuild, full rebuild.
What year do you think there end up, the rebuild being over? Like, if you had to predict.
23.
Yeah, I was going to say that too.
Yeah, I agree. 23.
Yeah.
That's reasonable. Yeah.
I think Rutschman comes up before then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Still Mancini and stuff like that. But, it's still going to take pitching. Yeah, John Means. They just got rid of Bundy. When I wrote up the Orioles article, I also talked about Hunter Harvey. People forget about him. He was the top draft pick for the Orioles years ago. He's 25 years old right now. He's getting healthy. So we'll see. I think you're going to see him next year, Hunter Harvey. And I think he might be good. So it might be someone that, accelerates this thing. And, we'll see what happens. But, I got some faith in him. I talked about him in the article that I did. And I think Hunter Harvey could be someone that's a surprise for the Orioles over the next couple of years.
He's definitely a guy that went through a lot of arm trouble, and he's finally healthy now. So, with a full spring training, and, I don't know how deep he can go into games. I know when they brought him up in September, he was pretty much only pitching at most an inning or 2 at most. So I don't know how much they can stretch his arm out, but he still has giddy up on his arm. So he could be a valuable piece coming out of the bullpen as well, too. Some of these pitchers we've seen in the past, sometimes the starting pitchings that, for the O's, they've done it in the past before where, Jose Mesa was a top prospect and they converted him to a closer. The same thing with Brian Mattis as well, too. That, he didn't pan out well enough. They convert him into a lefty specialist. So sometimes with some of these guys, either they've gone through some injuries or they just don't pan out, but they still have stuff. You can convert them to the pen, and now those guys only have to worry about an inning or two instead of having to go through 5. So, Hunter Harvey for next year, he could actually bolster their bullpen possibly if he can't be stretched out to go 5.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. Hunter Harvey could be a closer. I mean, with his stuff, if his stuff comes back and what he showed last year and his rehab and everything, I mean, he's got the stuff. So maybe he's a closer. Maybe he's not a starter. So at least it gives you a piece of the bullpen. That's all I'm saying. Like, at least it gives you a piece of the puzzle that's going to build this team. So Hunter Harvey, yeah, granted, maybe he's not an ace anymore, as they thought he once was. But maybe he's a closer. And the back end of your bullpen's all set. So who knows? Who knows? But I think the Orioles are going in the right direction. They're getting rid of the guys that they need to get rid of. They're getting the prospects. They're building their farm. That's what it takes. We've all seen it. We've all seen the rebuild from the Cubs to the Astros, all these teams, to the Braves. Look what they did with their rebuild. I haven't won anything yet, but they're there. So,
I mean, most teams can't be like the Red Sox or the Yankees and spend, $200-300 million on, on their roster. A lot of the teams are going to have to do, what the Cubs and the Astros, even what the Nats have done in the past. Draft, create a core, and then go from there. Continue to build, and that's how you can build, longevity in the team. I mean, it's amazing when you see, these teams, the Houston, the Nats, the Cubs, the young players that they still have to build around.
yeah.
They're going to be playoff contenders, for, the next 10 years or so, and that's what the O's are trying to strive for.
Yeah, and the big name teams like you said, like the Yankees, Red Sox, they can afford mistakes. See, there's a lot of teams that can't afford mistakes. See, the Yankees can sign someone like Jacoby Ellsbury to a 7-year deal, $20 million. They can eat that contract for the last few years. When was the last time Ellsbury showed up on the field? They can eat that contract. And it doesn't affect them. Red Sox can do the same thing. The Dodgers can do the same thing. The Astros seemingly can do the same thing. The Cubs too. But it comes back at some point. The Cubs and Astros are seeing now. It comes back to you at some point. You can't eat all these contracts. The Yankees, for all they've done and for as much success as they've had, they ate the Ellsbury contract, the Teixeira contract, the Sabathia contract. For all these years, the A-Rod contract, they ate that. They were still successful. They haven't won anything, but they were still successful because they could eat it and still sign players. Where they're on a different level to the teams like the Angels, the Twins, the Indians, the Brewers, the Cardinals, mid-market teams that can go out and sign players, but if they sign a player for a lot of money for a long-term deal and it doesn't work out, it kills them. Whereas it doesn't kill a franchise like the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And that's where the difference is. That's where the money difference is. I understand the luxury tax is what it is, and that's fine. There needs to be a floor. I don't agree with the salary cap in baseball, but I agree with the salary floor. And just because the Rays are successful doesn't mean that it should be the be-all, end-all of things. I think it hurts a lot of other teams when there's no floor.
Yeah, with no floor, they don't end up not spending any money.
They don't spend anything.
I mean, Oakland's pretty much the same way too. I mean, I guess you can say Moneyball. I mean, you got to spend a little bit to be able to get there too, and reward some of the players that you have. It's hard to operate for any of these franchises to kind of, not spend and win. But the Rays are trying to prove that they're able to do that. Oakland's trying to prove that they can do that as well too. But longevity-wise, I don't know how long you can go through doing that. Not at all.
And that's the problem, is that there is no floor and there's no expectation of spending money. This is part of the problem, is that, like, say, all right, the NFL, the players union negotiated, I think it was 53% of the revenue is going to player salaries. So that's where the salary cap comes from. Is that 53% of like the revenue of the NFL goes to player salary. There is no sort of agreement like that with baseball. So baseball has, like, you can spend whatever you want. Granted, there's no salary cap, there's a luxury tax, but there's no salary cap, no floor. There's nothing that says that the owners have to spend a certain amount, which I kind of disagree with. There should be money put back into your team. So I think as an owner of a team, you should have to put back the money you make should be 53 or 50% or whatever it may be, whatever's negotiated, should be going back into your players. It's like that in every other sport. There's a percentage of that, of the ownership that goes into your player. And I think baseball needs to look into this. And I think it will be looked into. I mean, we got 2 years and the CBA is coming up, so.
And that's going to be an interesting one coming up.
I just hope it's not a strike.
I don't think it'll be a strike. I think it's going to be amicable to a point. There may be a couple sticking points, but I don't think that the players or the owners can complain right now about contracts. I really don't. So I don't think that's going to be a big sticking point. I think the sticking point is going to be the rookie contract and the arbitration. That's going to be the sticking point. The years that you get a rookie contract and the years that you get arbitration, and this whole, if you hold the guy out for the first 2 weeks and he doesn't show up, I think that type of thing is going to be modified. But for the most part, I don't see a big disagreement between the owners and the players. I really don't. I don't see what the disagreement would be. Really? If you guys have anything, if you think there's a disagreement between the owners and the players, let me know, because I just don't see it. I don't think there's that much of a gap.
Well, hopefully, with the new CBA that they could reward younger players money sooner. So, I don't see ever a salary cap ever happening. I could never see that happening at all.
Right.
But, you could probably eventually see a floor happening, especially when you're seeing too many, teams tanking and not spending. I mean, even look at the Chicago White Sox. They're pretty much tanking. The O's are tanking. For a while, Houston was tanking too as well. If you look at half of MLB, half the teams can tank, and then the other half will try to compete, for playoff spots, and that's not what you want. You don't want half the league terrible and the other half just really good. You want good competition overall, and to be able to do that, you're probably going to have to create a floor. You want to be able to play games. You never know what could happen unless they play. Numbers can say, can only tell you, up to a certain point. So, we'll see what the future holds. But if teams continue to tank here in the next couple of years here, more teams tank. I mean, even look at Cleveland. Cleveland, they might not spend any money. They're thinking of trading Kluber away, and God knows what they're going to do with Lindor as well too. So,
Trading Lindor. Oh my God. It's like a horrible thought.
yeah.
What's that trading with the Twins? I'm fine with it.
See what happens. Yeah, so I guess that'll wrap it up on the podcast. This Orioles episode of the 30 teams and 30 pods. Be sure to check it out on all podcast platforms, and be on the lookout for the next episode, which will be the Marlins at some point next week. Right now, it's looking at Wednesday, as long as everything lines up. And if anybody knows any Marlins fans out there, then send them my way at Alex Kielar on Twitter, because I can use some Marlins fans to talk on the podcast about their team. So definitely, if you know of anybody, tell them to hit me up on Twitter. So yeah, that was another great episode. Thanks for coming on, Tommy, and obviously Johnny too.
Thank you for having me on, Alex.
Yeah.
Great stuff, man.
And you're obviously always welcome if you want to come on another time.
Much appreciated. It was great talking, Johnny.
Yeah, great talking to you too, Tom.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff, man.
All right, and then be sure to follow our Twitter, or the Scorecrow Twitter, at the Scorecrow, and check out all our articles, as we have, I have new articles about free agent signings coming out every time there's a new big signing. And we'll be on the lookout for all these big moves, when Garrett Cole is signed, Strasburg, Rendon, all the big guys. And be sure to never have too much pod tar.